It starts in the quiet moments, not with disaster, but with subtle disconnection. You stand in your driveway a little longer than usual before going inside. You wake up earlier than you need to and just stare at the ceiling. You scroll your phone at midnight, not to find something, just to feel something. Everything looks fine. And that's the problem. You've done what they said you should. You've built the life, provided, protected, pushed through. You've been the strong one, the steady one, the dependable one. But beneath the weight of all that strength, something inside you has grown silent. It's not failure you fear, it's that dull ache that whispers you're disappearing. And the worst part? No one sees it. They see your success. They admire your resilience. They have no idea you're quietly asking the question that echoes across empty boardrooms, late-night drives, and unspoken regrets. Is this it? It's not a question of ambition, it's a question of aliveness. Carl Jung once said, man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious, but most men never do. We're trained to achieve, to provide, to perform, but never to ask, who am I beneath all this? There's a part of you, buried but not broken, that still remembers, the boy who dreamed before duty. The man who once felt instead of functioned, the sovereign self that led with clarity before you became a soldier for expectations. In myth, he's called the sleeping king. He's not gone, he's just dormant, replaced by a role, buried under responsibility. But the crown was never meant to be given away, it was meant to be claimed. Not by domination, but by return. This moment you're in, this strange unrest, it's not a flaw, it's a summons. The same one faced by every man who's ever woken up inside the life he thought he wanted and found it echoing with silence. You're not in crisis, you're on the threshold of a deeper life. This is your second birth. But no one tells you that it feels like unraveling. That before you remember who you are, you must forget who you pretended to be. So start here, not with resolutions or routines, but with a question. What part of me did I abandon to survive? Because you don't need to be motivated, you need to be remembered. And the man who remembers becomes the king who never needed to prove anything at all. He sits in his car, engine off, staring at the garage door. He's been home for 10 minutes, but he can't open the door just yet. Not because he doesn't love what's behind it, but because he doesn't know how to show up anymore. He walks through the house like a ghost with good intentions, and the people around him don't see his collapse because he's still functioning. That's how it works, isn't it? You're not allowed to break, so you disappear instead. There's a myth about a wounded king whose land withers as his spirit fades, not from war, not from betrayal, but from a deep soul-level injury no one can see. The rivers dry, the trees rot, his people starve, not from lack of effort, but from the absence of his presence. This is no fantasy. This is what happens when a man neglects the part of him that feels. The modern man doesn't fall with a crash. He erodes in silence, behind success, behind strength, behind roles he never questioned. And when the internal drought arrives, it doesn't ask permission, it just begins. This is the wound, not the one they see, but the one that shapes every decision in secret. You can't name it, you only feel its symptoms, the chronic frustration, the ache of disconnection, the smile you fake in meetings, the distance between you and the people you love, the moments you lash out and regret it before your voice even fades. The question, always unspoken, why am I like this? Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Most men are not broken, they're just unconscious, repeating the same cycles driven by stories they never wrote. The wound isn't weakness, it's instruction, but society teaches the opposite, tells you to dominate it, outwork it, ignore it, perform through it. You were never taught how to sit with it. That's the paradox, isn't it? You become powerful the moment you stop pretending you're fine. You become whole the moment you stop chasing healing and begin listening to the hurt. Because healing isn't about fixing what's wrong with you. It's about uncovering what was buried beneath the performance. What have you silenced to be accepted? What have you sacrificed to be seen as strong? These questions aren't dangerous, they're sacred. And this wasteland you feel? It's not the end, it's a reflection. Your outer world is speaking the truth your inner world won't admit. But there is hope hidden in the dust. In the old stories, the king is not healed by magic. He's healed when a single question is asked. What ails you, my lord? This is the courage most men never summon, the courage to face themselves. Because when the king looks into the wound without turning away, the rivers return. The land begins to breathe. The people begin to sing again, and so does he. You don't need a better mindset. You need to step into the wound like a door and trust that what's waiting on the other side is not ruin, it's resurrection. Every man who rises must first fall, not into failure, but into truth. And truth doesn't always come in language. Sometimes it arrives in the quiet aftermath of your own outburst. You slam the door, you raise your voice at someone who didn't deserve it. And in the silence that follows, you hear it, not from the world, but from somewhere deeper. What's wrong with me? But nothing is wrong with you. Something is waiting in you. And it's tired of being ignored. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of your psyche that holds everything you've buried: rage, grief, tenderness, shame, softness, instinct. The boy who was mocked for crying. The lover who was punished for being vulnerable. The warrior who was told feeling makes you weak. The artist who was told to grow up. You didn't destroy these parts, you exiled them. And now they show up when you least expect them, in jealousy, in avoidance, in anger, in the ache that won't go away no matter how much you accomplish. This is where the descent begins, not into darkness, but into the part of yourself that has always known the light was real, because it remembers what it feels like to be without it. You can't become king if you're still serving the rules of a life built on pleasing, proving, or pretending. The descent is the refusal to live anesthetized. It's the moment you stop asking, how do I fix this? And start asking, what have I been refusing to feel? This isn't weakness, this is sacred fire, and most men never enter it. They bypass it with overwork, addiction, performance, pornography, perfectionism. Anything but presence, because presence means facing the one person you've trained yourself to avoid, you. And it's not easy. It's sitting in your car after yelling at your child, feeling the shame hit your chest like a wave, and instead of blaming stress, you ask, what's behind this pain I keep passing down? It's staring at your marriage and realizing the distance isn't circumstantial, it's personal. You've been so busy protecting everyone that you forgot how to be with them. This is descent, not to destroy the old self, but to burn away the mask that no longer fits. In the ancient tale of the loathly lady, a grotesque woman holds the answer to the king's survival. But only when the knight surrenders control, only when he honors what repulses him, does she transform into beauty. Sovereignty comes not through conquest, but through reverence for what was rejected. So too with your shadow you must bow, not in defeat but in intimacy. Because what you refuse to face becomes your prison, but what you face with compassion becomes your crown. The man who descends and sees what he once feared is the man who cannot be ruled by fear again. This is where the true king is born, not on the battlefield, but in the furnace of self-awareness, in the moment you whisper, I'm done performing. Because the descent isn't about death, it's about reunion, and what returns from the underworld is no longer a role, it's a sovereign, crowned not by image, but by integration. There's a moment when a man finally stands in the mirror, not to measure himself, not to compare, not to fix, but to face himself, with nothing left to hide behind. And in that moment, something shifts. He stops asking how to be admired. He starts asking how to be aligned. This is the beginning of the throne. Not the seat others give you, but the one you build through decision. Because, the true king doesn't ascend by chance. He ascends when he no longer negotiates with what dims his soul. It doesn't look dramatic. It often happens in silence. A man walks away from a conversation that would have cost him his integrity. He tells the truth even if his voice shakes. He turns to his partner and says, "I've been here but not present. That changes now." These are not gestures, they're coronations. Robert Moore wrote that the king archetype governs through order, blessing, and generativity. But blessing isn't sentiment, it's structure. It's the man who creates safety in his household, not by dominance, but by consistency. It's the father who disciplines not to control, but to cultivate. It's the leader who brings calm by knowing who he is. This doesn't come from ambition, it comes from integration. Carl Jung called it living your personal myth, the story that only you can tell through the shape of your life. Not the story handed to you by culture, family, or fear, the one you choose. Most men live in a myth they never authored, so the king writes his own. And he doesn't just write it, he lives it daily in every boundary he keeps, every silence he honors, every moment he refuses to abandon himself. This is your throne. It's not made of gold, it's made of choices. Built one no at a time, one honest conversation at a time. One act of restraint, one act of presence. It's built in the moment you catch yourself drifting and return. In the moment you say, "I'm sorry," without defending it. In the moment you hold your values in front of you and say, "This is the line, and I will not cross it, not even for comfort." That is the throne, and from that throne the king doesn't chase impact. He becomes it. He doesn't speak to impress, he speaks to anchor the room. His energy brings coherence, not chaos. His leadership blesses, not burdens. And when he walks into a room, people don't rise because he demands it. They rise because his presence gives them permission to become more of themselves. That's the paradox. You become untouchable the moment you no longer need to be seen. You become powerful the moment you stop running from stillness. And you become the king, not by claiming control, but by claiming responsibility for your own presence. So take your seat, not in noise, not in force, but in the steady, quiet knowing that you have become someone the younger you needed and the world needs now. Because a man who's found his throne doesn't just build a kingdom. He restores the soul of the land beneath his feet. You sit at the dinner table, phone face down, conversations circling around you like wind through an empty room. You're here, and yet not quite. There's nothing wrong, and that's the problem. Because when you're disconnected, it's rarely loud. It's subtle, soft, a quiet ache in the middle of everything you built. And this is where the next chapter begins, not with fire or war, but with presence. With the decision to stop floating through your kingdom like a ghost. A king doesn't need a sword in his hand. He needs awareness in his breath. The boy sought attention, the warrior chased victory. But the king, he brings order to the unseen. He stabilizes rooms simply by standing in them. Robert Moore said the mature king blesses. He creates structure, balance, fertility, not through control but through coherence. He doesn't demand loyalty. He inspires trust. He doesn't broadcast strength. He becomes the source of it. But blessing isn't always beautiful. Often it's lonely. Because the more you bless, the less they notice. You create calm and they forget there was chaos. You prevent collapse and they forget what it cost you to carry it. That's the invisible weight of true sovereignty. And still you bless. You wake up before everyone else to think clearly for those who can't. You hold your anger so your son doesn't inherit it. You choose silence in moments you once fought to win. You create a field where others can grow, even when no one sees the gardener behind the garden. This is the shift from image to essence, and it's here that legacy truly begins. In the parable of the empty pot, the emperor gives each child a seed, asking them to return with the best plant. A year later, one boy arrives with an empty pot, ashamed, but the emperor smiles. The seeds had been boiled, none were meant to grow. And the only child who didn't fake a flower becomes the next ruler. Because the king is not the most impressive, he's the most honest. You don't become a king because you built the tallest tower. You become a king because when everyone else reached for appearances, you reached for truth. And so you bless, not because it's rewarding, but because it's right. You bless your home by being consistent when you're tired. You bless your partner by seeing who they are, not who you want them to be. You bless your children not by demanding greatness, but by modeling integrity. You bless by remembering that everything you touch responds to how you hold it. The king doesn't say, "Look what I've done." He says, "I've created space for others to do what they were born to." Your power is not in how loud you speak, but in how deeply you listen. Not in how much you control, but in how well you cultivate. This is the quiet heroism of the awakened man. He trades applause for alignment, ambition for contribution, force for presence. You will not always be thanked, but the roots of your legacy will grow into places you'll never see. And one day someone will say, "I became who I am because he showed me how." That's what kings do. They don't just build, they bless. And when you bless, the land around you blooms. It begins in the smallest of things. He pours the coffee without rushing. He walks through the living room with steady shoulders. He listens to his daughter, not just to her words, but to her silences. And when he laughs, it doesn't feel rehearsed, it feels earned. This is the man who has returned to himself, not with fanfare, not with a flag planted on a mountaintop, but with quiet authority, because he no longer seeks to be crowned by the world, he already is. And the world feels it. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And this man has paid for that privilege in full, with every difficult choice, with every descent into the shadow, with every refusal to abandon himself just to belong. He has let go of the titles that were killing him. He has stopped trying to impress people he doesn't respect. He has remembered that sovereignty is not what others give you. It's what rises in you when you finally believe your life has meaning. Now, he is the man who brings peace simply by entering the room. He is the man who blesses others just by being still in their presence. He is the man whose children will someday say, "He didn't tell me who to be. He showed me who he was." This is not a conclusion, this is coronation, but not the kind made of golden banners. This is the crowning that happens when you sit in your own silence and say, "I am proud of the man I've become." You stop reaching for approval. You stop shrinking in rooms that once made you feel small. You stop betraying your own voice to avoid discomfort. And in doing so, you rise. Not in power over others, but in mastery over your own story. You become the one who plants trees, knowing you may never sit beneath their shade. You become the one who holds space for others to feel seen, heard, protected, and free. You become the king, not the warrior trying to win, but the elder holding light. And now the crown doesn't weigh heavy. It fits, so what now? You don't need another self-help video. You don't need to be told who to be. You need only to remember who you are, and then walk into every room as if the ground was blessed by your footsteps. If this journey has stirred something in you, don't let it stay in your chest. Write it below, declare it. Your mission, your truth, your return. Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs your presence. Your values, your voice, your inner king. He's not waiting in the future, he's already here. Long live the man who stopped chasing the world and turned inward to lead it. Long live the king.